Yes. Hello, Ananda.
So this system, Zoom worked fine today for me. Clicked right on, and thank you for fixing it up, getting it.
Yes.
So I had a little dialogue conversation with you on one of your posts recently. And I thought it was a real good topic for me as related to my work in particular, but it's about if you really are present for people and tune into their emotional, I think you're using the term bouquet of where they're at emotionally and what they kind of need. And then how to do that really, I don't know, profoundly and authentically, and at the same time not be buying into it in terms of that it gets roots in one's own emotions, right. Emotional body, say.
Yes. So, the question is, is it possible to be present without a position, without any a priori, like a listening space, is space of presence, that doesn't have any notions about how things should be, how the other should be feeling or not feeling, how they should be perceiving things, what is the correct way for them to perceive and understand and feel. And so there isn't trying to correct somebody or and to the extent that is possible, to also be transparent to one's own fears, concerns, notions about things. Because we have these filters, don't we? Filters that often we're not aware of, and they may be brought up in a certain situation. And we find ourselves maybe unaware, wrapped up in our own emotions. And that taints our capacity to be present without the effect of our own emotions to whatever the other is sharing, or
it seems like in our culture, there's so much of that, people being wrapped up in their own reactivity or something. It's hard to imagine that anybody gets together at all, practically.
Right. I'm talking about how I am in presence, how what is my what am I looking at? What is happening right here?
Right.
You know, what's happening on deck, so to speak.
Right.
And these are questions from myself to myself, you see. So it's an inquiry. It's a question that I may bring into the conversation within myself. You know, that question is alive, and so to the extent that is possible, to be honest about one's own about what's happening, you know, within oneself. If it's appropriate, that we have fears, you see, we have. There are assumptions that we have about. The main assumption is that there is an external reality, you see. So what is happening in relating to somebody else, to a very large extent, it's very intimate. It's not intimate with another, it's intimate with oneself. There is an intimacy with oneself. In a way, I am with the other as with myself. So if I'm pushing and pulling, directing the relationship, if you can mute your mics, if I'm directing the relationship in a certain way to see that sometimes to protect our feelings or our image. If you can please mute your mics. To be open to the transparency, which is an interest in looking and listening, not knowing. And if I am wrapped up in the other's emotions, so it is. There's nothing much to say to do about that, because it's happening. But I can possibly quickly enough or after the fact notice what has happened. But in noticing doesn't require a judgment, you see, because then that takes it to a different level. Noticing what is sort of the light of awareness, sort of in noticing that it's an impersonal noticing. It's just it's a information coming to you. And but there is the emotions arise when we feel that there is something at stake, that there is something outside of consciousness happening. Because from the perspective of truth, it's all embraced, it's all connected, it's all, there's nothing off, nothing missing or nothing wrong. I mean, I'm not talking about the thinking realm, talking about the factuality of things. A storm comes and maybe there are some trees that fall in the forest. Maybe a tree falls on somebody's car. Or there is a factuality that has no mistakes in it. But there is a perspective that does not recognize that. There is a perspective that has an assumption of good and bad in it.
And a victim, maybe.
And a victim and somebody guilty and somebody to blame. You know, the whole shebang of thoughts and feelings, you see.
So yeah, what I'm getting is that you're reminding me of like what the Jean Klein always pointed us to, a kind of a silence and a kind of listening that doesn't, it's intimate, but it's not involved at the same time. So it's something like that.
Yes. It's the intimacy of being, because in our experience, we're constantly experiencing the intimacy of the self. For example, right now in this conversation, I'm experiencing my experience, which is completely intimate with myself. And you're experiencing your experience, which is completely intimate with yourself. You're never experiencing anything outside of yourself. And the question that's fascinating is what is this myself? You see,
I know that it's the exact same thing. When you say it's here and I say it's here. Yeah.
Yes, it's always here, being not something in space. You see, you could say here in awareness. You see, here in presence. You could say here in beingness. So here is appearing within awareness. So yes, it's intimacy without being affected, meaning without separating yourself from the intimacy, because there is no one to be affected except when we separate ourselves from the intimacy, which is not in fact any real separation. It's more sort of a feeling, let's say, or a download. Then there is that.
Yeah, and pre-inquiry, that could be 90% of one's experience, and then it seems like that it switches around until it's until it's not much, and then.
Well, you know, as they say, like, God does not discriminate. God's invitation, you know, using this religious language, is for all of her children. She loves everybody. She is love. So the invitation is never turned off, you see, but the freedom is also never turned off. So we are free to continue to be concerned about our person, meaning a person being what we feel and believe we are, not in fact what we truly are. And there is a freedom to have these concerns about my body, about my money, about my future, etc., about life and death. It's part of it. part of the freedom that we have to be a personal self.
So it's almost like the freedom to put your hand on the hot stove.
Well,
you know what? At a certain point, it's not not tempting anymore.
Yes, I mean that's, what they say, like, we are numb to our own self-indulged suffering and misery. We're sort of numb to it, and it's like the beehive of thought is constantly buzzing, and it veils your direct experiencing of the suffering. So in a way,
no, I hear that.
thinking our way to veil the feelings that are there. So part of one of the sadhanas is, rather than thinking about your problems, is to feel them, to feel them, meaning to approach what seems to be fearful to you, what seems to be unapproachable to you, to open yourself up to the possibility of approaching it empty-handed, without any intention at the emotion level, the feelings level. But we have a tendency to think our way, which is a form of spin, or a form of avoidance or escapism from what is intimately myself. An emotion is intimately myself. As I come to it, I come to its emptiness. I come to at the core of feeling is the light of being.
I see. Well, just an analogy came to me, which is maybe not so good, but it's almost like a video game that's capturing your attention and all kinds of stuff going on, and then you just realize, I don't even... What's all this about? I can just walk outside and be free.
Yes, that's a good one. Yes.
So there's so many things that I know that when I talk to you, I tend to go on and on. But there's a couple of other issues of this, especially related to my work. One is when you see someone suffering, and it's, say, grief. Their spouse is dying. Say they're dying right there, this moment, and the person will say something like, "Well, I suppose everything happens the way it's meant to," or something like that. They make some little some little gesture towards going beyond their whole story at that sometimes. And then I sometimes find myself saying something kind of ultimate, like, "Nothing wrong ever happens," or something like that. And sometimes in that moment, they're sensitive enough to get to say, "Oh, that must be true. Otherwise, this would be intolerable," something like that.
I think that there are times of loss, important loss like that, like losing a cherished one or loved one. It's sort of, there are times that they clear a lot of, they feel this cleared in a way. There is these moments for this sort of sharing that you're just sharing with me.
Right. It's a nice aspect of the work to be with people like that. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention in relation to this is just the pure effect on the nervous system of highly emotional. Like, for example, we have grief counselors, and their job just day in and out is to go talk to people who have lost somebody recently, or preemptive grieving or whatever you want to call it, before the actual death, they do it, you know, kind of day in and day out, counseling people. And there's, or with me, with the symptoms, you know, the symptoms of pain and shortness of breath and stuff that I deal with. So I still have the kind of conception that that like almost like it's bound to infiltrate the emotion, the subtle body, the emotional, something about the nervous system, my own nervous system, and you know, maybe that's not very true. Maybe it's not.
Your question is about the cumulative effect on the nervous system.
Cumulative effect, kind of just kind of a osmosis, even if you're not buying it on a certain level.
I think there is something to be said about that. Yeah, even in other situations, like when you are working under a lot of pressure, any type of work, you could be a carpenter, whatever, you know.
There
are, you know, the organism needs a break from this sort of, there is something to be said about that. But in terms of outside of the organism needing sort of a pause button to press take some time off or whatever, you know, do some yoga or go on a retreat, whatever, go on a walk in nature or whatever. Outside of the organism, if you are talking about a personal self, that there is a cumulative effect at the feeling level, that what's going to happen to me, that's sort of too much for me, or is it going to, in the long run, make me sick or affect me psychologically or affect me, you know, psychically, whatever. Then you have to look at what you're referring to as the me. To look at that. So that's a direction that is feeding the imaginary me impression, the concern about me in time, you see. It would be the effect of exposure to grief and dealing with people's grief for time. There are two different levels.
So for some reason when I talk with you, I get all these analogies come up to me, and sometimes they're a little wacky, but it's like you have your car and you can drive it through the Mojave Desert and it gets covered with dust and throws it. You just drive home, rinse it off, and go on your business.
Right.
It's not that your car becomes ruined because of it or something like that. It's not that it, you know, that it gets fundamentally changed or the cylinders stop working or anything.
There is a difference between, following up with your analogy, between the car being impacted. You know, if we don't change the oil regularly on the car, the engine can blow on the car.
Right.
That is a possibility, a definite possibility.
So that's sort of the body-mind level.
At the body-mind level. So there is a difference between that aspect and I am the car.
Yeah, right. Yes.
You follow?
Yeah, or even if it was just my car, it's my car, and I'm you know, and I'm getting worried or whatever.
Well, it makes sense to be worried about the car because if you haven't changed the oil on the car and you're driving through the Mojave Desert, it's wise to be worried about the car.
Okay.
And to be looking for the next stop to do what you can to remedy it. Hopefully it will not be too far, which is quite different from I am the car.
Yeah.
that something's happening to me.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just transferring that back to the bedside. You know, the whole gestalt of the thing. It's really, is there a what's here? What's, you know? Yeah. Good.
Okay, Amanda.
Thank you very much.
Nice talking to you, Amanda. Any questions? Any questions?
Well, I'm gonna, I didn't understand the conversation before.
Oh, by the way, if I can make a comment, if you can, because I'm going to be repeating your question for the recording.
Yeah.
If you can, as much as possible, keep your question short. Just talking generically to everybody, so I can follow the question as well. Yes.
So the question that I have is on conversation with, I guess, another individual. Brought up as how you, there was a how or something about how you listen or how you stay present or how you be.
How to stay present in a conversation with somebody.
I guess so. I guess
Yeah.
that's what the and not get involved yourself emotionally. I guess, in this case, that, people like having emotions.
Yes.
So, for me, there is this, sometimes there's a conversation with somebody and there can be a thought, okay, I'm going to listen. Okay. That's really sometimes that's really looking at me and saying, I'm going to be good and listen. Okay?
I'm going to be good and listen.
Yes, you know, I'm going to be good and listen. Or if I do this, that'll be helpful for them. It's not terribly wrong, but it'll be helpful for them. You know.
That sounds good to me. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, I'm going to be good and listen.
Right.
You know.
But I think the helpful part though is really, but unhelpful though, a lot of times the me can come into that, okay? It's that there's an expectation that I'm going to be helpful, and so I'm going to think well of myself, or they'll think well of me, okay? Then we're going in a different direction, I think.
Well, but it's not interfering with your listening, right? You're still listening, right?
Well, it would be
in other words, you're providing a space for the other person to sort of be heard, and you're interested. You're interested in hearing them.
Well, when you said, you know, I mean, say there's only one self, there's only one reality, then we're really listening to ourselves.
Yes.
Okay.
And it makes sense to listen to. It makes sense to listen to oneself if oneself is interested in being listened to and being heard, right?
It really comes out of an aspect of love, and so what about when it's not time to listen?
Well, then you speak if you have something to say.
Or leave.
Or leave.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I'm saying this is, because sometimes it is like, how do I listen? This question's more about how do I listen? What do I do? What's the proper way to listen? And all that kind of stuff. And that really involves, how to do something, how to be a person that listens.
You can notice that sometimes you are in a conversation with somebody and you are already thinking about your answer to them, or you're maybe you can notice that you're disapproving of what you're saying, which is okay, because you may see some incongruity in what is being shared, let's say. But sometimes at the first signal of disagreement, let's say with this first noticing of some dissonance, we sort of scratch up, we're no longer interested in what they are saying, you see. And there may be an assumption that I know and they don't. And it could be that there is some truth to that. Some people may be talking, from a certain level of understanding or from a certain level of information that is quite different from yours. You may be more knowledgeable in that, in just factually speaking. And that makes sense to recognize some incompleteness in what somebody is sharing with you. But there is another aspect to it where you close yourself, you cease to listen. Because in fact, you don't know what is the next thing the person is going to say. They may be pulling a gem in their next sharing to you. We don't know. We don't know. Now, there are situations where you can see that it's like it's regurgitation of junk. And then there's no interest in the conversation. It's I want to download my stuff onto you. I'm looking for an open ear. So there isn't, I think one answer to the question, how do we listen? Because it's dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, Krishnamurti went through that a lot in his sharing. People asked him about that too.
Krishnamurti was sort of an adamant type of guy, He had this, he spoke about listening with some sort of, okay, erase, forget it. Krishnamurti be Krishnamurti. Okay. All right.
But yes, because Yeah, that's all my question.
It's dynamic, you
and
see.
Really, a question. It ends up being sometimes that yes, because a lot of times when people are sharing something, let's say it's just a sharing something, you're there and you're listening and you're going to listen and they want to listen to them. And you just do it out of compassion. You listen and you hear. More than just out of compassion. You might hear because you're listening to yourself. I think when there's an expectation or when there's a I have to do something in order to make sure that they share and get over their problem or something, that I'm going to be a plus for them. That's where the me starts coming in, and that will because there's an expectation that something's going to happen. And if I don't have that, then I'm there. I'm very present. And, they share, and it's really for me allowing to just share, just being there, being present is enough. Like the self, the unconditional self.
If you're not interested in listening, don't listen. If you're interested in listening, listen.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter, does it?
Okay. All right. Okay. That's weird. Yeah, I didn't think.
I'm sort of halfway listening to you right now. So.
What's that?
I'm sort of halfway listening to you right now.
Yeah. I'm
and it's okay, it doesn't matter. Really.
Yeah, and it's vice versa.
So, you're right on, vice versa. It's all good.
I don't know where he's going. I'm sort of around.
Yeah.
Because the real thing is, for me, is I'm hearing a question, how do we listen? And I'm not, sometimes being worried about that is for me is a problem. Sometimes it is just like you're saying.
If it's not your question, it's not your question,
Yeah, okay.
You don't have an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dynamic, it's alive, it's real time, and the whole thing is. And there is no good and bad, and no better or worse, and nowhere to go. And it's all available to us when we go down a direction that creates unhappiness. You're not going to be spared. You're going to live it.
Yeah.
Maybe people around you will live it too, and as a result of that, you will even live it even more. So it's all transparent. It's all there. In a way, you don't need to do anything. You will be led along the path of light, because we cannot walking in the mud forever. It just don't work. Sooner or later, we're going to be looking like, where is the way out? You see, so, and sooner or later, you're going to find dry ground. You have to find dry ground. Why? Because you're here. You're here. It's in a way, it's all presented to you for that. Your experiment right now is very clear that you cannot stand unhappiness. That's not what you love. Worry and concern and tossing and turning at night. Who loves that? It's very clear that we love peace and happiness, and here we are. What are we contemplating? We're not contemplating anything else outside of peace and happiness in everything we do.
Yeah.
So if you don't find it, if you don't find peace and happiness, it will find you.
Yeah. I'm listening.
You have no choice about it in a way.
Yes, exactly. You
You have no choice, because it's very clear to you that I have no choice. I love happiness. Did you choose to? I love happiness? No, it's just there. It's there. It's you have no choice about it. You can live your life criticizing and judging and hating, and you're, you know, deep down within yourself, you're still struggling, trying to find a way out of it.
Yeah, the reason I was asked that question too, or could formulate it, is just simply that I'm finding that I'm really looking at the I that's limited, the I that is a conceptual, that I have to do this, I have to do that, I do that, I have to listen, I have to, you know, and there's a lot of stuff like that.
If it's complicated, drop it. Drop it.
Know, and it's such a natural part of just being quiet and one can listen. Nothing has to actually happen, because it will happen no matter what it is. So,
you got it.
I was thinking of listening to internal dialogue.
Internal dialogue, yes.
So and you said if you're not interested, don't listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Internal dialogue. Well,
yeah.
if you're not interested in listening to internal dialogue, don't. You're not interested. Yeah. Well, you're going to force yourself to be interested? If you're not interested, now you're going to create an internal conflict that I should be interested in listening to internal dialogue. And that's the way of being, or, you know, is to listen to internal dialogue. And you don't realize that's adding more to the internal dialogue. In fact, you're not interested in listening to it. So don't. You know, when we say internal dialogue, it's just the me, you know, it's just what's going to happen to me, and what did she do, what did he do, when will I, right? I mean, it's me in time, right? If you're not interested in listening to that, actually, that's a very good thing. Because, in fact, we are interested in listening to that, but we're not interested in inquiring into the I. Well, I'm not saying that's, maybe you are interested. I'm just speaking generically. Yes, right. So, yes, if we're not interested in listening to internal dialogue, yeah, that's a good thing, actually. Then we're not going to follow it. We're not even listening to it. But if it's going on, that means we're listening to it.
Yeah.
If it's going on.
It seems to diminish if we don't listen to it.
Yes. Right? There is no interest.
You can't feed.
Right? It's absolutely. Absolutely.
It's tough to shut the door on it too. I mean, not, you know, not enough. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes, I think
To shut the
it
door.
happens no matter what eventually as time goes on.
To shut the door on the me dialogue,
Yeah.
you have to see in the moment,
Yeah.
that in fact there isn't a me.
Yes.
You know, there isn't a me. So at that moment of seeing the ghost, that you're basically taking yourself to be some bundle of thoughts and images, you see that, and in seeing that, the interest in continuing to feed the ghost. So it's a moment by moment seeing, noticing, and it's an interest. There's been interest in truth, in trusting the purity and the simplicity of our experience, which is completely transparent. It's not occurring in time. If you simply get that nothing is occurring in time. There is no occurrences in time. I know a lot of physicists will freak out in hearing that, but there is no. Okay, outside of thought, okay, fine. In thought, there is time, you know, yesterday and tomorrow and all of that. But I'm talking the directness of our experience, which is this aware presence. right? We just get that there is no time. Therefore, what is the you? What is the you yesterday?
Back to Krishnamurti, I think he did say that thought is time.
That
Time is thought.
thought is time. Okay.
Well-
Give him credit. No, I was just, I actually spent a lot of time reading and contemplating Krishnamurti's. I used to have his tapes and listen to his talks. It's just, somehow it just moved on. But yeah, so, right. In time, you will find time in thought. Thought, but the fact that thought says yes, there is time, does not mean that in fact there is time, because thought doesn't know. Thought, I say that often. Thought is an object of perception. It's a form that you're perceiving, a subtle perception. How can a perception know anything? Knowingness belongs to the knower, right? There's only one knower, which we refer to as I, right? I. You need to think about it. You just look directly right now. What is it that knows? What is it that perceives? What is it that is? It's I. Yes. You don't need to think about it, because when you're thinking about it, you're imagining that in thought you're going to get some answer. That there is going to be an answer that's going to come from thought saying something. But the question is a direct question. Direct question. What is the real perceiver? Right? That's the question. And the question is not being asked to anybody else. It's a question, not somebody's asking you that question. I ask this question to myself. Because if I don't ask a question to myself, and somebody is asking me this question, and I say yes to the question, when I say yes to the question, I've decided to ask it to myself. So sooner or later, the question is a question from myself to myself. You follow? It's like the baton, like I pass on the baton, somebody passes on the baton, or here's the question. And if you're not interested, then it's not your question. You're not asking the question to yourself. But if you're interested, then you're asking the question to yourself. The self asks, what is it that perceives? So, if it's a true question, then whoever is posing that question must be real. If it's a real question, whoever is posing that question must be real. And since I am posing this question, it's a real question, then whatever it is that is posing the question is real. The poser of the question is real, the question is real. If the poser of the question is not real, there cannot be a real question. And if the question that is posed is real, but the poser of the question is not real, then the question is actually not real. So the poser of the question, the poser of the real question has to be real. And if it's a real question, then either it's going to elucidate an unreal answer or a real answer. We're not interested in the unreal answer. What does that mean? We're only interested in the real answer, right? So the real questioner asks a real questioner and gets a real answer, right? So real. How many realities do you have? You have one reality. So the real questioner and the real question and the real answer are one. What? Yeah. I mean, that's higher reasoning. It's reasoning, higher reasoning, because it's reasoning about consciousness, about truth. It's simple. We get it. I know we get it. We get it, but man starts to think, well, I don't know, but we're getting it. I know we get it. It's no doubt. I know. We're getting this. We're getting this. Now, what is it that is real in your experience?
I have noticed that sometimes more important than an actual answer is just asking a question. Because just asking who am I, what's going on, consciousness is, in my experience, to be more important than getting the definite answer. Because when I ask myself that question, I immediately achieve a different state of consciousness.
Yes.
I'm more aware of myself, the world, what's going on.
Yes, yes.
So in other words, for me, just asking the question is a lot.
Asking the question is but
so it's as important.
Yes, but you see, every question is looking for its ending. Yeah? So question is looking to end. So within the question, there is the desire for its ending. Otherwise, there is no question. Otherwise, it's just a piece of being. When there is a question, there is a desire for ending the question. So the question is looking for its answer. Its answer. Now, there are some questions about truth. And within the question, there is the answer. Because it's about truth. And if it's a true question, and if it's seeking its answer, which also must be true, otherwise. So within, because there is one truth, one reality, within the question is the answer. You follow? It's not like, because the question is about reality, it's about God, it's about truth, it's about the absolute, whichever way you want to word it. Because there is only one absolute, one reality. The question and the answer are one. So there are some questions that are about truth, that when you pose these questions, they immediately give you the answer. And this is what you were saying, adding my own words to it, that when you ask the question, what am I? Immediately you experience what this question is referring to. Within the question is the answer. And this is what Fernando was saying, that when he poses this question, that's sufficient, that's enough for him. His experiences, what the question is referring to. But I would like to add that there is the possibility for the question to be your very self, for you to be the question, for the question to be you, where there is no questioner and no question. So there is a blooming of the rose where the full fragrance and the full blooming is revealed. And yes, a question that goes directly to the source does not invite the mind. You cannot think about it. You cannot think about it. The mind has no door to enter it. And as soon as the mind finds a door, it's no longer the question. The question is no longer the question now, it's thinking. And the mind says, oh, I'm thinking about the question, but no, it's thinking about itself. This is in the Zen tradition. They have all sorts of koans. You know, they're like riddles. You know that about truth, about consciousness, that are meant to bring you to the contemplation where the mind has no access to the question. But where were we? How did we get to where we are now? But it doesn't matter, does it?
I have a question that's kind of along the lines, at least this.
Okay, Amanda.
This is Ananda back.
Yes, Amanda.
Well, I see there's a thing here that says chat, so I suppose I could type it in like on the old thing.
It can be.
That's what it is, but I'll just read it anyway. Okay, there's the level of level's not exactly the right word, but the level of where we're totally self-same.
Self what?
Self-same. We're the same.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
you were saying earlier, you know, when I say here and I say here, the here is not a place, it's an actual transcending reality. Well,
you're talking about Sahaja Samadhi.
I guess that's always my it's my so then there's the interplay between persons and personalities. So there's the person slash personality on either end of the terminal here.
Okay.
Okay, and then there's also the self-same reality.
Right.
And we know that they're not really, they're all, we know that the personality is actually an expression of this here.
Yes. So it's a similar expression to the oak tree and the palm tree and the
exactly
the bees and the bears.
The bees and the bears.
Yeah, they're all expressions. All expressions.
Mm-hmm.
They are phenomenal expressions. Are on the same level. Yeah, they're expressions of God's expressions, God's manifestation. Yes, the manifestation of the one reality.
Right.
Okay. Nothing. What I'm saying is, there's nothing special about the Megdi Ananda character. The Megdi Ananda character are as special as the bees. The oak tree, yes, at the same level.
That's pretty special, nature.
Yeah, all special. So is the breath.
The breath, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's easy to see the breath as one breath being experienced by different breathing organisms, so to speak. But so my question here, my issue about is. When there's a closeness with another person, for me, there's always been kind of a desire for understanding this non-duality in terms of really not conceiving them as separate. You know what I mean? Or at least having like you mentioned Sahaja, knowing that the two characters who are in any kind of an interplay or relationship are essentially one.
Yes.
Essentially one. And so here, what I wrote here is, so what is the interface here? Can we be non-dual in our comprehension of the real? Well, yes, I know we can comprehensively have a comprehension of our essential non-separateness, but then when it comes to the actual recognizing everything as myself, capital S, So I've had some experience recently. I have a new sweetheart recently who sometimes I feel so close, you can't even say what is one and what is the other.
Right.
And now you can have that in a special moment, special moment of closeness, but to understand that all the time, without that division in the mind. That's what I'm kind of looking at. And I understand that total unicity is not the point, because why would we be here to enjoy each other if it was just a one,
Oh, the two different questions.
okay.
So the recognition that all is the self, that another way of saying it, that everything is myself. Is not just particular or applies particularly to your relationship with your new sweetheart. Although you do experience that we are one, that all is one when you are with your sweetheart. But the all is one, meaning all is consciousness, applies across the board when you contemplate that there is one reality, and that I refers to this one reality, and that in this very moment it is the I that is appearing as this perception, that is appearing as this sensation, that is taking on this form, which is at zero distance of myself, which is intimately myself. And that doesn't change when you leave your sweetheart, or doesn't get augmented when you meet your sweetheart.
It could be on the crowded subway. It could be everything.
Doesn't matter what the perception is. Could be no perception, or very complicated perception, or very simple perception. What is perceived, its reality, is that which perceives it, the I that perceives it. And the I that perceives is not perceiving something outside of itself. The perception that the I is perceiving is intimate with the perceiver. So one could say, way of speaking, that the perceiver, which is not perceived, takes on the form of a perception or of a sensation. But in taking on this form, it does not become various objects. It does not divide itself into various objects.
You could say it already is those objects. If they appear, it doesn't become them. I don't know if that makes sense. It doesn't become these separate objects That's mind, right?
We didn't assert that there are separate objects. We haven't gone there.
Right. Okay, good.
Because for there to be separate objects,
Mm-hmm.
thought is required.
Right.
So consciousness, meaning the I,
Mm-hmm.
takes on the form of a thought and says, bottle. And when it says bottle, it says that's an object.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when
Right.
it says bottle, it's an object. It's experience of both the thought. The thought is not occurring apart from you. It's the thought intimately
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And the form that the thought is taking, which is B-O-T-T-L-E,
Yeah.
B-O-T-L-E, bottle. The form that this thought is taking
Mm-hmm.
is not separate from you. When you say B, there isn't something outside of yourself. The sound B,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the perceiver of that sound, the speaker of that sound, and the perceiver of that sound,
Mm-hmm.
and the sound are not separate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's nothing separate. So when you say objects, in fact, there are no actual objects outside of consciousness. Consciousness formulates objects. It says objects. Like in your dream, you dream various dream objects and dream characters and dream experiences and dream whatever. So the knowing everything as myself,
Mm-hmm.
if it's augmented
Mm-hmm.
when you are with your sweetheart,
Mm-hmm.
is it's a reminder for you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that, or it's an arena for you
Mm-hmm.
to contemplate that in fact there are not two. That there are not two. When I'm with my sweetheart, there are not two. And rather than saying, "Oh, there are not two," when I am with my sweetheart,
Mm-hmm.
at the expense of not being with her, to contemplate what is it to not be two in her absence.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Meaning, in this moment, she is not with you because we are here conversing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can contemplate in this moment, what is it what is the true understanding that all is myself. You need to understand that when I say myself, I'm not referring to any image or any object or any, I'm referring to I meaning the invisible, the undeniable
Mm-hmm.
reality of consciousness awareness.
Mm-hmm. Something just occurred to me, if I can say. I think that when there's an extremely clear expression of oneness with another person, what it reminds me, why it feels so special, is that very same sense of self has now the world has the world has disappeared into it, and so now there's no separate world. Even if you experience it with one person, or to the degree you could experience it
So
universally.
So since you seem to have a special gateway into wholeness, gateway
Yeah.
into wholeness and oneness when you are with your girlfriend, imagine this to be your girlfriend.
Right.
So you are, if you can contemplate that you are always with your girlfriend.
Right. 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 That the main
The
main
essence of that, the essence of that.
yes.
The core, the core of that,
Mm-hmm.
the essence of that.
Right.
There was another question. Wasn't there two questions?
I don't know, but I did jot down the word objectified. It just occurred to me, this is kind of maybe cute, but women in particular say, we don't want to be objectified. And that's because they want their essence. They don't want to be objectified. They want their essence to be appreciated, which really is oneness.
And the male hunters, right?
It goes for everybody, of course.
Nobody likes to be objectified. Everybody likes to be recognized for what they truly are, and that's not an object. Everybody likes to be seen for their reality, for their truth. Not for some image or something that you like or don't like. You like it better today, less tomorrow.
But I guess if there was a second part to this question, it would just be that you could say, we can say me and you. All right, we can use the word. They say in Zen, we can use the words, even if we.
No, we're not talking about language. Language. We play with it any way we want, of course. We're talking about the true understanding.
Yes.
A lived understanding. How to live our understanding of the wholeness of being.
Right.
I would like to mention that there is, to everybody here as well, that there is a weekend retreat, Saturday, July 27 and Sunday, July 28. The details are on my Facebook page and on the meetup, yes? So that if people are interested, can register. It's in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? 3 weeks? 2 weeks. 2.5 weeks, yes. Okay. The retreat is it's a good opportunity to go deeper into the inquiry, into the stillness, into the abiding as the piece of being that we are. Any questions from us here? Yes. All is well? You're happy?
So can I say everything is my sweetheart?
Yes, why not? Everything is your sweetheart, your very self. Everything is love and beauty. Everything is love. Everything is your very self. Sure, you can call your very self sweetheart. Why not? That sounds good to me. Okay, well, thank you all. Very lovely. Okay, Zoe, Ananda, Shiva, hello, and George. Well, this is being recorded, and tomorrow or the day after, I will post the recording online on YouTube. Okay, namaste. Okay, Shiva. Okay, Ananda, Zoe.